Welcome parents to Hamilton High School's Parent Presentation Series. We started these parent presentations about 4 years ago because we saw there was a need to provide some support services to parents in our community and within our school. These parent presentations provide a wide range of topics. We have expert speakers that talk about social media, communication, mental health issues, all the areas that teens are going through, and to educate parents on what they can do, resources they can obtain, and just support services. We also have a student educational series at the same time in the evening, so you can bring your child with you and they will go to a separate classroom and they will get education on the same topic. Most teachers give extra credit, but your child will always get 2 volunteer hours for every session they attend. And at Hamilton, we also have support groups that the social workers run. We have support groups for anxiety, depression, and self-harm. We have groups for grief, substance abuse, anger management, and we also provide one-on-one support to students, as well as meet with parents if there's issues you might be struggling with and need some professional guidance. You can come and meet with us. And so at Hamilton, we provide a great deal of services. Please contact us if you need any additional support, or we can sit down and talk about ways that we can help you and your child be successful during these high school years. Thank you so much for coming to our presentations, and these presentations, as you can see, are videotaped and will be available 2 weeks after every presentation, along with the PowerPoint and any other materials. We will have them on our website. So thank you and have a great day.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I've been invited back. Have been at Hamilton twice before. Thank you to Mr. James and Rajani for having me here. Rajani, as Mr. James said, has cultivated quite a program here, and to see this room full after a year of having it almost full is awesome. And now to have the kids alongside of you in tandem approach of having those courageous conversations together. So Rajani mentioned my name is Katie McPherson. I have been a K-12 educator for the last 21 years. Took a step off of a campus last year to go into teacher training, parent training, administrator training based on teen brain and social media and everything that goes along with that. So tonight is an overview of what our kids are up against. And so I am I'm going to get a little bit personal with some stories that have hit me hard in the heart, some things that are going on in our community that are tough for our kids and for our families, but some good news that people are coming together to help them out, and that includes your families as well. So up above is a former student of mine, Laura. My journey with social media started in 2004, believe it or not. MySpace.com had just rolled out, and I was an assistant principal up in Scottsdale at Mountainside Middle School. And one of my students came to me and said, I think Laura's going to hurt herself. And at the time, self-harm really wasn't a thing. So I said, well, what do you mean she's going to hurt herself? And she said, well, I think she's planning on, committing suicide in the bathroom tomorrow. And I said, what? So the school police officer and I interviewed her, and she said, no, that's just a rumor. I just had a bad day. So a long story short, she had posted on MySpace that she was feeling like this, but as administrators, we didn't even have smartphones yet. We had flip phones. And so to us, that was a really important lesson, because 3 days later, she did come to campus with a kitchen knife and attempted in one of our bathrooms. So that was 2004. So we're in 2017, and we still have kids struggling with this, not because there aren't supports in place, but because we have not trained our children to use these devices. We've handed them to them, thinking they need them for safety reasons, which they do, but the digital citizenship piece we're still really lacking in. And so thankfully, because students always say something to someone, whether it's a text or in person or various people, we were able to intervene. And Laura just graduated from ASU with her master's degree in special education and is a teacher. So that was a successful story. So I'm going to fast forward to May of 2015 and share with you a really, really tough story that was not as successful. I did not know Marcus Wheeler personally, but I was hired by the Tempe Union High School District last year to come in and provide training for all of the teachers, administrators, security guards, secretaries, bus drivers on how this could happen. And if you haven't heard the story, unfortunately, Marcus died by suicide on campus. So that's never happened to my knowledge in the Valley or the state of Arizona until 2015. Really tough for a staff and 3,200 students to endure an event like that. And admittedly now, those administrators said, you know, we didn't have the supports in place that we needed for our faculty to triage the children. And so they have done a tremendous job in looking at social emotional supports for their kids and done a complete overhaul of their initiatives. And I can confidently say that because of the training they've now put in place, both for students, faculty, staff, and the community at large, including parents, we now know what to do. It's not going to be perfect, but I am committed that this can never happen again. At the board meeting, one of the board members asked a really good question. He's like, so if we put another guidance counselor on our campus at each of our high schools, they have 7 high schools, would that help? And of course, metrics are really important, but how do you quantify a life? You cannot quantify a life. And Marcus was a student athlete. He had a 3-quarter ride to Central Arizona College. He was the #2 runner in the state of Arizona. He also attended school here, as well as Basha, and then ended up at Corona. So I'm going to share with you some of his last tweets. And I don't do this to trigger you. I do this to show you how insidious kids can be on their social media when they're crying for help. I think we miss the mark when we don't supervise, don't know how to supervise, and give children devices that are dopamine releasers. So I'll talk a little bit about Teen Brain, and I know Travis Webb was here last week, so if you were here, or 2 weeks ago, if you were here, you got a good dose of one of my favorite colleagues. But I'm just gonna share what the weeks that led up to Marcus's passing. And I think it's really important that I show you how, especially for boys, what it looks like and what it sounds like. So on May 10th, he posted, I bought my mom IHOP and she said she doesn't eat French toast, and a bunch of funny icons. The next post was later that day, I'm tired of being unhappy. So on Twitter, you're allowed like 45 characters, so it's not a dissertation. And for kids, when they look at that, they're all kind of unhappy. They're at school and they're like, I have an AP chemistry test, you know? So the baseline of how they talk is pretty negative at times depending on their mood. So serotonin levels are off, teen brain is underdeveloped, and they're under a lot of stress, especially if they're highly equipped and or struggling with friendship. So the next day he posted, life has fallen apart in front of my own eyes and it's all my fault. That was retweeted 281 times, and it was favorited 391 times. So my point is, if we don't start to train kids on what to do when they start seeing these things show up, we won't know. because they are in the trenches with these students. They know their friends best, and kids always tell each other what's going on. The following day, he wrote, "I want my life 3 months ago back." It was retweeted 243 times and favorited 379 times. So the following day, he wrote, "Help," that's it. And then he posted a funny meme and an explicit video, and he replied to one of his friends. And then on May 12th, he wrote, no motivation to do anything." The following day, he posted another video and then another meme. And on May 12th, 2015, he wrote, "There's going to be a suicide in the school right now." It was retweeted 3,700 times and favorited with a heart 4,800 times. And those aren't kids saying, "haha, funny." Those are kids retweeting, "Somebody, dear God, help us." So if we have highly equipped students that have lots of friends, that are excelling in school and activities, that are saying this, what's going on with our middle pack kids? And what's going on with our lower pack kids? That is what I'm committed to, is that tonight I'm going to give you an overview of what they're up against and how we can support them in the ways that make sense for Teen Brain. Because sometimes in our awesome approach, we talk at them instead of listening, and some of our one-liners actually make things worse. So I'm sorry to start out a little bit grim, but I think it's important that you recognize even the best kids say and do things that A, they don't mean, or B, they mean that we miss. And we cannot quantify a life. We cannot lose another child. So I'm personally committed. Mr. James and Hamilton and the rest of CUSD is committed. And 10 days or so, we have 8 superintendencies coming together for a town hall on the subject of not just suicide prevention, but mental health awareness for our whole community and the markers that lead up to a decision. So I hope that kind of sets the stage for what I will provide you tonight. This is a quote from Rosalind Wiseman, and she does a lot of work with social justice, and social justice in the sense of how do kids meander through different groups in school, bullying, harassment, intimidation. And I think the reason I keep this quote in all of my presentations is the word dignity. At the base of what bullying, harassment, and intimidation is someone trying to strip someone else's dignity. So I just want to give you a couple minutes, 2 minutes, to talk to each other about what is the difference between dignity and respect. Because we say to our kids all this time, you need to respect each other, respect your brother, respect your teachers, respect our property. And the word has started to lose meaning because there are kids all day long that are being disrespected and they're not sure what to do about it. So I'm going to give you just 2 minutes to discuss how would you define the difference between dignity and respect. I'll give you 2 minutes. Anybody willing to share your opinion or your definition of respect? Let's just start with respect since we use it a lot. Definition of respect. Yes, sir.
It's an action. It's how you behave towards somebody else or something else or yourself.
Okay, so how you act towards someone else. Yes.
Treat someone the way you would like.
Awesome, right? So that would be an amazing world to live in, right? So hard, right? So remember that we're working with tween and teen brain. So I will show you a brain scan, but if you have a young child in your house that's 11 and is female, she's only halfway there. If you have a young child in your household that's 15, he's only halfway there. So our freshmen are 13, 14. They're not even halfway to half development of their prefrontal cortex. You are their prefrontal cortex. Congratulations. So the prefrontal cortex is the decision-making capability of the brain. So when we give them devices and they do goofy things, they're using half of a brain to make those decisions. So it's not too crazy to think you're going to see some goofy stuff happening. So respect is you want somebody to treat you the way you treat them. That does not always happen for, I would argue, most of our students. Sometime in their school career, if not every day, someone may say something or do something, whether it's social, emotional, mental, physical, that's disrespectful. So we have these reporting mechanisms on campus: report, report, report. Often kids don't want to report because, why don't they want to report? Retaliation, right? Peer group. So the number one thing to anyone, I would say 9 to 18, is how do I stay current and relevant in my social group? And that is going to trump good parenting and good teaching any day, any night. So your wonderful, highly equipped children sometimes will make decisions that don't align with the values that you've instilled within your household. We want those fantastically horrible mistakes to happen under this roof and the roof of your home, so that we can guide those consequences and have those courageous conversations. So if respect is showing a mutual admiration for somebody else, what is dignity?
Sense of self-worth.
A sense of self-worth. So dignitas is the Latin root of dignity, means inherent worth. So at the base of any sort of bullying, harassment, intimidation is someone else is stripping someone else of their dignity. It can be an adult to child, child to child, coach to child, teacher to child, anybody. So when we say to kids, you need to respect each other after they've gotten into a conflict with someone, the takeaway message is, oh, so you want me to treat them how I'm supposed to, even though they just called me a fag and told me I was going to be deported. So that's kind of what we leave them with. And they're like, okay, now what do I do? So then they get on their devices and half of a brain takes over. So some of the things that you'll see online are going to be goofy. They're going to be explicit. They're going to be sexual. They're going to push the boundaries. This is the age, the formative years, where they're going to do that. If we give them a device and we give them no training, we surely can't shame and condemn them for the decisions they make. So the training has to start not only in your homes, but also at the school level and working in tandem of how do they get the skills we want them to get. So tonight I'm going to, can you just advance that one? Tonight I'm going to just reiterate, if you haven't thought about how you're sustaining the relationship with your kiddos, which on a daily basis, I have 4 girls, so I'm in the trenches with you. We can push for rigor and relevance, especially at the high school level, but if we don't have relationships, we can't get any of that. Especially for boys, they work on a trade system. You like me, I do your work. You don't like me, I don't do your work. Girls are probably more apt to please in that manner, where the relationship is more about wanting to please that teacher, even if they don't like that person or, agree with their parent. They're more likely to do that. So we're seeing some decline with our boys in struggles academically, which then go on to the device, trying to find somewhere to be successful. There's a reason that boys really like video games, because they're novel, they're relevant, and they're competition. And those are the 3 ingredients our boys thrive on. When they can be a hands-on experiential learner, you got them. And some of our classrooms don't provide for that, and they can't sometimes, but we can get them there. And so if I'm not finding success here, I can go in my room for 4 hours and I can sort of connect a little bit falsely with people I don't even know, and I'm getting a huge dose of dopamine on my brain. And dopamine is the feel-good chemical that we get from friendship, from sexual intimacy. So when they come out of the bedroom after 4 hours, what are some of the things that you see?
They're hungry.
They're hungry, okay? What else? So often I hear from parents, irritable, inattentive, grouchy, nailing their sister or brother. That's the dopamine crash. So when, it doesn't matter what device it is, it's a blue light device, they're getting alpha and beta waves from it, and they're getting a huge dose of dopamine. So they're trying to find relevance in something that creates success. So if the success isn't happening here at home or at school, there's much success can be found on the game, and the feel-good hormone is really hitting them as well. So, and if they're not winning the game, you just hit reset. So, the dark side, so to speak, of video games is it's not honing the verbal emotive at all. They're not interfacing with humans. They may be really working those logical, mathematical, spatial skills, but we really want these relationships to go up. We really want to exit secondary students that have really solid coping and resiliency skills. And so behind this Apps 101 course that I'm exposing you to tonight, everything goes back to relationships and the secure base that they're after in your homes and at school. So hopefully we're working in tandem to do that. You go one more. One more. Okay, so I think Travis probably went over this, but just a refresher if you weren't here. So when kids get into conflict, any human gets into conflict, the amygdala swells, and I call it the 4-alarm fire pull. So a student that is in conflict, that's feeling uptight, anxious, stressed out, whether it's a friendship issue or an academic issue, is going to pull the amygdala, it's going to swell, and you're going to see the demons come out. Kids that have chronic stress, it doesn't matter what kind of stress and or have endured trauma, especially in ages 0 to 5. They're going to pull that 4-alarm fire pull, and they're going to go what Travis and I call low and dirty. So they're going to pull that, and the behavior is going to look really different to you than you've seen before. So there's a host of hormones going on. Boys are getting about 7 to 10 testosterone spikes per day. So that's hitting them, adrenaline, and then the stress hormone cortisol. So when stress happens, brain gets flooded with cortisol and it coats. And then mom and dad are trying to figure out what's going on, and lots of words are hitting that brain, and they're like this, or they're looking down because they can't access the verbal emotive. So they have a host of hormones going on, and then they have half of a prefrontal cortex. And not only are they trying to manage their in-person life, but then they have this double agent persona over here that they're straddling. And this persona is almost more important than this persona, because this keeps me current and relevant in my social group, and if I lose status here, then who am I over here? So you have kids that are developing, who am I? Who is my core self? And who do I want to be? And that's where the conversation needs to start with any app that they're using. What do you want the world to know about you? Nobody has probably trained them in a digital footprint. What do you want it to look like? If you ask them to sit down and list 6 adjectives, what do you want the world to know? I'm an athlete, I love chess, I play baseball, I love my grandma, whatever it is, that's what they should be showcasing on these platforms. What they're showcasing is the yuck that they're feeling here. And in order to get them to feel better, we really have to take a look at these brains. And we have to make sure that they're getting good rest, unplugging, and that they know how to use this stuff. And most of them are just learning with their friends how to use this stuff. And I can show you 10,000 apps that the app makers are banking that you don't know about, and they're not really using those. There are 3 or 4 main platforms that we're using. And so Carlitos is here as my resident expert. Whenever something new hits the scene, I'm like, what is this? Show me. That's what you need to be doing too. The kids know exactly how to work it and what it's all about way before we do. So just being aware of how they all work and how they operate with the brain as well. I already showcased 11, and so full development for a female, 22. Full development for male, closer to 30. Is anything making sense? Yeah? Okay, so even for your employees, I mean, this is a leadership thing too, you know, employees, marriage, parenting. And then you look at our college and high school graduation rates. 30% of boys between 18 and 34 are living at home. It directly aligns with this, and not that living at home is a bad thing, but we do have sort of a failure to launch in certain populations. And a lot of highly, highly equipped kids from schools like this sometimes come home because they can handle the academics, but they don't know what to do about the mean roommate, or the person that tried to touch them in an inappropriate way, or a professor was super mean and I don't know how to approach them, so I'm just gonna, chronic anxiety and stress. So we're seeing these apps and these devices are increasing anxiety and depression. I can't even tell you the calls and the emails I get just from our community about, I'm really concerned about my kid. He's a good kid, but let me tell you what's going on. And it has nothing to do with what kind of kid he is. It has everything to do with the hormones and chemicals that these devices provide that you may not be aware of. And if you are, as families, we have to decide, what does technology mean to us? About 10 years ago, there's a huge push. Let's integrate it into the classroom. Awesome, I'm all for it, and there's some really great things. But cumulatively, most of our kids are online at least 12 hours a day. And when I show you the brain scan of what it looks like in a developing brain, it looks a lot like Swiss cheese. It's eating away at the cortical cortex as they prune away some stuff that they don't need, but we want to keep the really good stuff. So this is the scan. So this is a normal subject and this is a cocaine addict. So this is what 4 or 5 hours of video game looks like over time. So the more passive kids get with non-verbal emotive stuff, the more passive they get with human interaction. So if I'm on a video game or I'm texting or I'm Instagramming or I'm tweeting or Snapchatting the life away, I'm not using any human interaction, truly. I'm not using verbal emotive skills. I'm not honing those for later in life. And so the balance has to come from home. You've got to figure out, how on earth are we going to balance this, especially if they've been with a device and they're 17 and you gave it to them 5 years ago. And then you came and saw the mean lady and she said, take it away. No, just kidding. Yeah, I am so for you blaming it on me. I mean, truly, like, it's just, when you look at this stuff and then you truly look at the data that aligns with it, I'm more worried about 5 to 10 years from now, from a mental health and a physical health standpoint. I mean, there's, a joke called tech neck, they're all head down, right? So what is that doing to vision? What is that doing to neck? All of those things that go along with that, but most preciously, the brain. So that's kind of the foundation of the app training for tonight, but I think it's really important to really note, all sorts of rates are going up. We're seeing a lot more kids in our counseling offices. In the Valley, in the last 25 days, across 4 different districts, we've had 5 students die by suicide. That is unprecedented, and they aren't kids. If you were to look at their social media, they are highly equipped children in activities with lots of friends, but they don't know how to cope. And all of them on their platforms were making small cries for help and big cries for help, and kids saw it. So when we train kids about how to deal with that, there's some really simple ways, even in the early years, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, for them to know how to report. Most kids will say, well, I thought he was kidding, or B, he only said it once, so I thought he was just having a bad day, or I didn't know who to go to, or the people that I'm supposed to go to, I don't trust. So that includes us, and that's not a rail on you. That goes back to that secure base and relationship. Yes?
Can you repeat that statistic for a second? What you just said about how many days was it? And how many
24, and 5 students spanning 4 districts. Yeah, so, in the last 20 years, I typically on campus within a school district lost 1 or 2 students per year. Of course, with social media, it's more reported. Those are successful and not attempts. So again, in a couple of weeks, we have 8 school districts coming together saying, we're in this together. And we want parents there, we want law enforcement there. This is a community-wide effort to have a really courageous conversation about it. And social media is a huge piece of what's going on. When you and I were in school, we passed notes and 3 people might have seen it. 3,000 people see it. 3,000 people know where you are. 3,000 people know on SnapMap if you weren't invited to go to that party. It's huge for them, and they really just don't have the skills to manage it. And I'm not sure I want them to have the skills to manage it, to be honest. So I'll just keep going to the, this part behind this. So cortisol is the stress hormone. Once that goes up, a really easy way, if your kid is stressed out and you're not getting much out of them, especially for boys verbally, emotively, walking around, physical movement and water will immediately dissipate the cortisol. So if they're stressed out and you're like, what's going on? What do you have to do? Da-da-da. And they're like, Mom, leave me alone. Let them. Leave them alone. Let them move and give them water. That will immediately dissipate the cortisol. And less words and more listening. All right, the next one is dopamine feel-good hormone. So all of these devices, they are on a dopamine rush pretty much all day long. When I leave my subdivision, kids are waiting for the bus, they're on their phones. At school, they use their phones in the classroom. After school, they use their phones. At night, under their pillow, they use their phones. The dopamine release is completely out of control. And that throws off sleep patterns, it throws off serotonin levels, so their mood regulation is all over the place, not to mention what they're experiencing through puberty. So the app training is essential to understand the apps, but this part is almost more important, if not equally as important to understand. And the last one. Serotonin, oxytocin. So oxytocin is the tend and befriend hormone, so that's how we bond with each other. Moms sometimes do it a little bit differently than dads, but those serotonin levels, you've got to unplug the devices. You've got to have a central charging station in your bedroom, not next to your head, because there are waves coming out of the devices. And the devices need to be in the off position. And I would advise yours too for your sleep and rest. Kids cannot control themselves. They're completely addicted to dopamine. They're not addicted to the phone device or the iPad or the laptop itself. They're addicted to the dopamine. And so they are truly like an addict. And so you've got to pull them out of those bedrooms because they've got to get good rest. And that is tough, especially if you haven't had that in place. But I would digest what you hear tonight and come up with a plan as a family. How are we going to manage it? How are we going to balance it? And there's some really good apps out there to be able to actually manage it remotely and virtually if you're away. And I'll give you the name of those apps as well. So Travis probably went over this last week, I hope. So this is the attachment cycle, and this is what our kids are after. Every human being has attachment needs. I'm okay, the world's okay, and adults are okay. When that doesn't happen in their perspective, and remember they have half of a brain, they are going to find someone else or something else to match those attachment needs. So where on earth can they go in 30 seconds and post a photo, get a huge dopamine rush, and feel I'm liked, I'm wanted, I'm needed, I'm heard? So when we look at young girls posting 75 duck face selfies, huge rush of dopamine, and my bucket is full. And then after about 20 minutes, the selfie is not getting as many notifications, so now I'm going to post another one. I'm going to post a different photo or a different pose. So the attachment need is underneath all of these behaviors on these apps. And what they're after is that secure base. I want to be seen, I want to be heard, I want to be liked, I want to be followed. And during the formative years, it's pretty intense. They're jockeying for a position, and so online behavior gets them a really fast rush of attachment need, and it gets a really fast rush of dopamine. So the apps themselves that you're going to hear about tonight, within the app itself, the app makers have coded it to hold back notifications. So if I check my Facebook and I post something and I have 40 likes, I put my phone down, and 7 minutes later I'm like, well, I wonder how many I have now. And adults do this too, by the way. You check it and there's 1 like, and you're like, that's weird. You put it down. Well, then 2 minutes later you're like, that can't be. I'm going to check it again. And there's 15 likes. So it's called gamification and brain hijacking. So the reason kids are constantly checking is because the app itself has been coded to hold back the notifications, to create more of an addiction. So that's why one duck face selfie gets 40 likes, and then she's like, well, crap, I gotta do another one to be more relevant and current in my social group. So then she posts 7 more for the night. So not only does she get the attachment need met, but she also gets the dopamine as well. Does that make sense? So app makers are banking on you providing a debit card attached to the iTunes account. And we do, because that's how they download and purchase items if you don't have family share. So I'll go over some of those mechanisms as well. So can you go back up once? So I think the response and what I talked about at the outset is what kids are constantly saying to me. My PowerPoint converted from a different program on there. So when we talk about responses to kids, Brené Brown says, rarely does a response make something better. What makes something better for a child or an adult is connection. So what are some of the things, and I'll give you a couple minutes just to discuss, what are some of your favorite one-liners to say to your kid when they come to you and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a molehill and you're making a mountain out of it. So I'll give you a couple minutes just to discuss, what are your favorite go-to phrases, and then we'll discuss some of them if you're willing to share out. So I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes to do that. So is anybody willing to share one of your favorite one-liners? Yes.
Don't be such a drama queen.
Don't be such a drama queen. I love it. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable, right? Okay. Anybody else willing to share? So let's just hang on that since he was so brave. So what does a 12-year-old girl do with don't be such a drama queen? What does that mean?
She feels like whatever she feels is not important to us.
Right. So just the word drama, I've had to take out of my vocabulary. Because I learned that I have twins that are 9, a 10, and an 11-year-old. Drama means that it's like fake, right? That it's made up and it's a play on a stage. And what they're going through is super painful and messy in their opinion. Remember, half of a brain. So when we say to them, don't be such a drama queen, we're actually sort of re-victimizing our victim, especially if it's an ongoing conflict between 2 girlfriends, or she just broke up with someone, or whatever the scenario is. The takeaway message is, you don't understand me, and you don't understand my pain. So a sympathetic response sometimes sounds like, well, at least you had a boyfriend and you can find another one. Or at least you didn't fail your science test, you only failed your math test. So responses that start out with at least should probably be shelved. And we do it a lot, right? I mean, it's just automatic. We're tired after work. We're like, oh my God, at least you didn't fail the math test. We'll work on science. So what would be more of an empathetic response when a child comes to you about anything that they feel is painful?
Well, let's talk more about it.
Let's talk more about it. So the key word there being, I'm going to listen and you're going to talk, right? So I don't know if Travis last week went over his 4 acronym LOVE. Listening, observation, validation, and direct empathy. So a lot of times, things that I used to say at the school level and parenting, like, well, just ignore her. A true aggressor is coming back for more. So if this person is having a true conflict, a true aggressor is coming back for more. So ignore her may be a temporary conflict or temporary strategy, but it kind of has just air behind it. What about, why don't you just go find a new group of friends? So you're in 7th grade, it's March, and you're asking her to go find a new group of friends. It is not an easy task to find one friend, much less a whole group. So some of the responses that we give need to have a little more empathy behind them, because things that happen on these apps are going to create a lot of pain and a lot of drama, a lot of mess for our kids. And they need to know that you're there for them, the secure base of that attachment. Because if you're not, they will find someone else to be that person. And when pain sets in, our students in this community and many communities in America are seeking numbing agents that are not healthy. In every zip code, it doesn't matter where you live, they're seeking compensatory behaviors that are not healthy. And so we don't want them going to another 14-year-old to decide if they're going to send an image of their chest to someone. We want them to come to us. So the responses they get during the formative years are going to dictate who they're going to go to for advice. And every single child is going to be offered something, and it's probably going to be offered to do something with someone that they may not be comfortable with. And we want them coming to us. And that's what happens in person and on a ton of these platforms. And most of what we've done with the training is don't talk to strangers and beware of predators. That's just one slice of digital citizenship and becoming a good digital leader. Can you go to the next? Can you go one more?
The following is a scene.
Yeah, go back to that one. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to show you a video. What I'd like you to do is to jot down, if you were a 10, 11, or 12-year-old, what the takeaway would be for you. So part of kids using these apps is figuring out what parts of them they like, what parts of them they don't like, and what it means to them. So this is a video from 2009. So if you have a 17-year-old, this would have been what was rolling out on their smartphone, what they have access to. So we've given them a medium in access that has a drug behind it. So I want you just to jot down, or in your head, I want you to think of what you would think if you were a kid watching this. Why can't I get it to play? Oh, there.
Oh, 3! That was not luck, that was skill. Yo, I'm killing you. Yo, Usher,
JB, what's up, man?
I'm just playing video games with Ryan.
You think you can hold the house down till I get back?
Yeah, I can do that.
All right, my man.
Yo.
Do that for so long with Justin Bieber. Spare you. But so that is what rolled out when our 17-year-olds got smartphones. So what's the takeaway if you're a kid? In order to be cool, I have to have what? What kind of party? Unsupervised party, okay? How do I need to dress? What do I need to look like, act like, have? Have what? Somebody said something. Accepted in the party, okay? What else? So the whole song was about one love, right? So I gotta have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. I have to go to unsupervised party, I have to dress a certain way, I have to have a certain phone, certain video games. So all of this plays into these different personas and avatars, and what you see coming out of their bedrooms in dressing perhaps aligns with or does not align with what you thought they were going to come out looking like, right? So we're going to fast forward to this year. You play that.
Please don't make any sudden moves. You don't know the half of the abuse. Got me feeling you can hide so high. So we'll piss off the neighbors in the place that feels the tears, the place you lose your fears, yeah, reckless behavior.
Baby, I don't need dollar bills to have fun tonight. Baby, I don't need dollar bills to have fun tonight.
You don't wanna be high like me, never really know why like me. You don't ever wanna step off that roller coaster and be all alone. You don't wanna
Work, 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 work. You see me heavy work, 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 work. You see me do me dirt, 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 dirt. That's something about that work, 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 work.
pull the sheets right off the corner of the mattress that you stole from your roommate back in Boulder. We ain't never getting older. Yo te estoy queriendo, siento algo por dentro. Y tú me dices, estás muy loco, deja eso, mami.
But you gotta put in work, work. You don't gotta.
Getting high, alcohol, sex. So all of these mediums are part of what we call media literacy. So how do they receive these messages and figure out, who am I, how do I deal with this, and how do I stay current and relevant in the social group? So this directly dictates what you're going to see online. So I'm going to show you a couple missteps by some local children. So these girls went to Desert Vista. I'm sure you heard about it. It went international pretty quickly. So again, Tempe Union High School District. So contracted with them, happened to be speaking about Teen Brain. And the superintendent's like, oh, wow, I never thought about that with this. 6 girls, D1 athletes, academically very highly equipped on their way to big, big universities, lost all of their scholarships and were suspended from school. So the backstory that most people didn't hear because the media didn't offer it was that the boy whose birthday it was, his Twitter handle is the N-word 123. It was his birthday. So as a friendship group, they got together and took this photo. And in their world, that word has a different connotation because every single song they listen to has that word in it. His handle was that word. Now, I'm not saying it's an appropriate word. I'm not saying that there shouldn't have been a consequence. But I don't think that these girls, if you had asked them 6 years prior, if their digital footprint is permanent, that they would have said, I'm racially intolerant. That probably wouldn't be one of the 6 adjectives that they used. But they lost their entire life in 30 seconds. Not because they're not good kids, but because Teen Brain plus here's his handle, we're just saying happy birthday. The entire trajectory of their life and what their parents had worked so hard for, gone. So the postvention to that is bring those girls back and teach other kids to be ambassadors for what not to do, what to do, how to manage this, right? Unfortunately, it happened at the end of the school year, and so summer happened. And one of these children actually had to change her name because every time you Google her, it came up 17 times on Bing and Google in the UK. And so I am so pro-kid about when we give devices. If you don't give training, you cannot shame and condemn them for things that they do that they don't have the capacity or maturity to handle. So I'll show you one more not local mistake. So this is a 5th grader who actually was on Musical.ly, so a newer app, and sent this to my nephew. If it'll play. Will it play?
Play?
Yeah. So Musical.ly is a lip syncing app. Super fun. But kids use it in appropriate ways and fun ways. But most of them don't realize when you have a public format, you're opening yourself up to billions of people. But I can't be famous if I'm not public. So they will turn it private for you, and then when you're gone, they turn it public. And they've now opened themselves up to lots of people that really just bank on, I'm gonna sit here and do inappropriate things to those videos. A lot of them dance on their beds and gyrate and do dance moves. And again, I have 4 girls that love to sing and dance. But if they're wearing a Fulton Ranch t-shirt and they're on their bed and they have a public profile, where can I find them at 3 p.m.? Where can I find them at 8 a.m.? Like they might as well just say, here's the door to my house, walk on in. And so again, I cannot fault this child because I don't even know if she knows what those words mean. Clearly she knows they're bad, and she was mad at my nephew, so this is what she said him. So I'm gonna go directly, hopefully, into showing you what's out there. So this is just, a typical Instagram photo. Driving through the snow, having fun. Next one I think is, I went to Sedona, had a great time, right? So Instagram is one of the top 3 that they use, but they also have Finsta, which is fake plus Instagram Finsta. They also call them spam accounts. So just like you and I had a diary or a journal that had a lock on it, so does their Instagram account. So an easy way to find out if your child has a Finsta is to see if they're following themselves. So go to their profile that you know about and see if there's another name that looks exactly like theirs that's a little bit changed. For example, like Katie, and then like KitKat123, or Katie124, something like that. So they follow themselves on the fake accounts so that they can have both platforms, one for mom and dad and one for friends. So Finsta, or the spam, is the underground Harriet Tubman of the world. That's where all of the vault of their stuff is.
So
Yes.
I wanted to add.
Yes.
My daughter told me the way kids get around that is to block their parents from being able to see their Finstas, so their
Right.
parents can't see.
Yeah, and like my takeaway message for you tonight is you will never be able to keep up with all of it. There's just no way. The best tool you have is open, honest, and direct communication with your kid. Doing phone checks, having tech talks each week, and really getting to know these platforms. And Carlitos is gonna lead you through some of them tonight as well.
Real quick,
Yeah.
quick way to work around that is just search your kid's phone number or their email, and it'll show up right to whatever account they've set up with that email phone.
Search their phone number on the app itself.
No, just on Google. Type in their phone number, type in their email. It sounds a little bit creepy, but just their name and their birth date, and any account that they put that information on will usually show up.
Resident expert, yes. So these are just images going back to public versus private. I don't know this child, but this is homecoming. I don't know if she drank alcohol that night. She's wanting people to believe she did. So remember, they're going to do things that may not be true. Drugs and alcohol are big ones that they want people to think they're doing, even if they're not. Because I gotta stay afloat. And in order to stay afloat, I've gotta do things that are a little outrageous. And the more outrageous, the more likes and followers I get. So face down in the bathtub, a lot of explicit stuff, whether it's drugs, alcohol, or showing your body. Everyone has their own methods of being happy. So they say things along with it that makes people think. A lot of times when I talk to the kids, they're like, yeah, I don't do drugs. And I literally believe them, like, because it's just this positioning within the group. So these are just prime examples. So this is a public platform. So if I am applying to USC and you Google my phone number, and I have a public platform, not private. And in order to be cool and famous, everything has to be public. So if they don't turn it to private, this is going to pop up. And that will eliminate somebody from admission or scholarship.
What is it?
That is a side of a hip, like probably passed out or asleep, like with a thong. Oh! Yeah, so this is what we have here, folks. Sorry. I told you I was going to horrify you, right? All right, next. So, like, weed is a huge thing. So, in my world, and I'm not negating that it's not a bad thing, but weed is like, to this generation of children, is like bubblegum. Like, there are so many other things going on in our community that they talk about weed a lot, like, kind of like, you know, we're all doing it. I don't know if they're all doing it, but the access is pretty easy. So when your weed is worth more than your MacBook. Awesome. So again, positioning themselves in the group, I don't know if this child does weed. Public platform. So if and a lot of these kids are very highly equipped and they are going to college. So we've got to teach them how to make their digital footprint nice and shiny, because this will eliminate them from a lot of opportunities. So this kind of got, yeah, keep going. You can go, one more. So kind of back to the bullying, harassment, and intimidation piece with apps, with cyberbullying. So obviously we have legislation behind it, but in the whole scope of a school day, kids are going to control, manipulate, and exploit each other in good ways and in bad ways. And at the base of all of that junk that they're going through, it's pretty developmentally normal that they're going to try to do that within their groups. It would be absurd to think that they're not. We did it. We just had different methods of doing it. They're going to do it online. So your takeaway or your thoughts need to center around, what do I do when my kid is controlled by another kid? What do I do when she or he is manipulating another child? Because they're all trying to define that core self. And so when we look at bullying and harassment online, every single situation that I've had to deal with, and 90% of my school day in the last 12 years has been fighting social media. Most of the stuff I dealt with did not happen on campus. It all happened online and then impeded instruction, so I had to deal with it. So as you think tonight, going away, hopefully not horrified too much, what is your response to that? What is your response to your child controlling, manipulating, or exploiting another child, or having that done to them? What are some one-liners that have meat and beef behind them that will allow them to gain in social competence? Because if we continue to say to them, ignore her, you'll be stronger for this in the end, some of them are very, very fragile. And when we look at markers of distress that are outlined in 13 Reasons Why and various other things that are going on that they're exposed to, we've got to give them more meat, because they're really struggling to figure out how to work with these children that are not being very nice to them. So it all kind of goes back, obviously, to that attachment need. I can go one more. So I want to leave you with some resources, and then I'm going to turn it over to Carlitos to give you the down and dirty on each of the apps. But every single app that's out there that currently today is out there is on safesmartsocial.com. So there's a parent app guide on there, there's an app chart, It shows you the good, the bad, and the ugly. It doesn't matter what app it is, it can be used for evil. I can use LinkedIn for evil. I can use Skype for evil. I had a 7th grade student over a 6-month period that studied online with a girl student, and they would study. Midway through, he had kind of manipulated, of course, her to like, let's study in just your sports bra and shorts. And by the end of the 6-month period, it was no longer the sports bra and shorts. And he took screenshots of that and sent them to his friends. And then her body was all over our campus. So you can say, oh, this app is horrible, or you shouldn't use Snapchat. It doesn't matter what it is. They will figure out back to that control, manipulation, and exploitation. And that is kind of the basis of what aggression is. We use it in leadership. I've got to control my employees and manipulate them to do what I want them to do. It wouldn't be crazy to think that kids with half a brain are doing that to their peers. All right, the next one. I would highly advise you checking out this app chart. So this is current as of today. There are thousands more apps out there that you could research and spend hours of your life that you'd never get back trying to figure out how they work. Most of your kids are using Snapchat, Twitter, and Instagram. There are some features within each of those apps. Like Snapchat has now Snap Map, where you can GPS locate anybody you want. It also has For My Eyes Only, is it called? For My Eyes Only, where it's a secret camera roll within the app. So as I said, if you're going to provide them with the device and allow them to download the app, you should probably figure out how it works, because some of the things that happen are criminal. And some of the things that they're exposed to in the advertisements are very, very explicit. And so what's happening in these bedrooms is more and more emotional isolation, and the anxiety and depression starts to set in. So when we're looking at drastic change in behavior, drastic change in appetite, something is off. Your gut is rarely wrong, moms or dads. If you're seeing an uptick in negative self-talk, where I suck, or I just can't get a good grade, or I lost all my friends, or she's being so mean to me, you've got to start charting cumulatively the behavior you're seeing. Look at I don't have Marcus's background and his genetic history and mental health, but over a span of less than 5 days in his senior year, he went from prom to not with us. And he said out loud, help, help, help. And if adults had been paying attention, I think the intervention could have been there. Would he still have made that decision? I don't know. That goes back to, do we have means within our homes for children to make impulsive and aggressive decisions? And some of us do, and so we have to also look at that, because some of the things that are happening are directly related to having the means to execute that plan. And as I said, I've been saying for at least 4 years, I call these kids the invisibles, because from all outside glances, it looks like everything is pretty great. And parents are great, and the house is great, and friends are great, but inside, they're not doing well. And I'm not saying that's all children, but certainly there are some that are really struggling with how to cope. So green, yellow, red. Green being security settings are pretty tight. If something goes south on the app, it's going to get reported and hopefully taken care of in a timely manner. Yellow's moving into dicey, and red is you should never allow your child to have any of those. And there are thousands more. These are just kind of the top ones. So lastly, I'll just leave you before I turn it over. Some of these companies are not US based. So if your child uses an app and a predator contacts them, or somebody meets up with them and sexually assaults them or touches them inappropriately, we do not have jurisdiction over an app that is based in another country. And we have cases over and over where it takes weeks to get the messages between a child and someone else in order to investigate what happened. So the ones in the red, some of those are not owned by US-based companies. And teenagers are the largest consumers of these apps, obviously. So they're banking on us not knowing what they are. So I'm going to have you, this is Carlos Mendoza. He's going to lead you through those top 4 that I asked you to kind of be prepared to listen about: Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter. Okay.
Okay, so like she said, my name's Carlos Mendoza. Graduated from Basha High School in 2015. Ken James was my principal. I've been on most of these apps, built platforms for friends of mine who have senior projects, friends who have started companies, thousands of engagements on each of them. And what I can tell you is they're dangerous, and they can be helpful too. First one I see up there, Facebook. Most kids aren't using them because you're on them now. Instagram. Katie touched a little bit on Finsta, and first off, I can tell you it's just stupid. I can say I've had one, you know, being 19, 20 years old, and for most kids it starts off, I go to a party, you know, I have a beer in my hand and a picture, I don't want mom to see it, I'll post it on my Finsta. For some kids it's escalated to, I received nude pic, not me personally, but received nude pictures from a girl. I'm going to put it on there and brag that, you know, I did stuff with her. And like Katie said, it's to stay relevant because, you know, Billy from the baseball team has one and he's gotten a bunch of engagements on it. So they're just not smart decisions. Next one is Pinterest. Haven't really heard a lot about it, except most moms are on it, right? Yeah.
Will you explain to them Snapchat, because that's the one?
Yeah, for sure. So Snapchat, for example, send a picture, it disappears in 10 seconds. You can already see how bad it can get. Messages erase after the viewer sees them, unless they screenshot it. The only good it does is it sends a message to the sender that it was screenshotted. But people have made a lot of money having your kids buy apps where they can screenshot without the sender being notified. So it's really never gone.
So what's the lure about Snapchat? Because that's what...
That it disappears after whatever timer you set on it. They draw kids in with, we have cool filters and everything. Yes, ma'am?
What's the difference between those two Snapchat looking icons?
Those are the same, just duplicated.
Same. So the first one is a Snapchat. The second one is your QR code. You might have seen it at a grocery store or the mall, wherever. I meet someone at a party. I show them the QR code. They open up their Snapchat, and they've automatically added me just from our phones being next to each other. So it can quickly escalate from there. New feature on Snapchat. Does anybody in here have the Snapchat app so we can do this together? Okay, let's open it up.
Will you explain streaks too?
The streaks, yeah. So while we're doing this, the way a streak works is Katie and I, for example, if we snap, which we don't, right? No. Okay. Basically, if we started snapping next to on this screen, the one that shows you everyone you've been Snapchatting, if Katie and I were snapping, it would say a certain number, and that's how many days we've been snapping back and forth. And for some reason, to some kids, it's the biggest thing in the world if they lose their streaks.
Has anybody had a child that's freaking out about streaks?
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, especially if you pull the device from them and you end the streak, the life's over.
And then that's what I do for the time. I'll take them away for 2 days.
Yeah, no more streaks, right?
They give their friends, they have friends.
And then they do it for them? Yeah. So if you're following the Snapchat thing that I'm about to show you, just go to the option to take a picture. And if your Snapchat's updated, you're going to hit the circle right under the circle to take a picture. And it's going to show you all the snaps you've been taking, your memories.
Okay, say that one more time.
So go to the option to take a picture and hit the circle under it. Go to the circle under the circle to take a picture. Yep. So up top, you're going to show all your snaps if you've been saving them. And there should be a search bar, right? Don't touch the search bar. Under the search bar, you're going to see the options for all, snaps, stories, camera roll. You're going to scroll all the way to the right. And you're going to see an option called My Eyes Only. So right under the search bar, it should say Memories. Under that, you're going to get a ton of options. So the way My Eyes Only works is kids can select pictures and put them under password. So I go to give mom my phone during phone check time. She doesn't see it because she doesn't have the code, and unfortunately, she doesn't know how to work Snapchat. So.
Is there a way to break the code or break into that?
Unless your kid's willing to give you their password, no, there isn't. So.
Why if the kid forgot?
Your kid didn't forget his password. That's. Stop believing it. So I'll do it one more time. So you open up Snapchat, and you're on the option to take a picture. At the very bottom, there should be a circle dead center right above your home button if you've updated Snapchat.
Just to interject, there are a bunch of ways, a bunch of what we call vault apps that kids have password protected. So up on the screen, there's the Calculator % app. It looks just like the calculator icon. If you touch it and it asks for a password, your child has a secret camera roll.
And this is a working calculator too, yeah.
Yeah, it works as a calculator, but it asks for the password. So there are hundreds of vault apps. So an easy way to figure out if they're hiding something is go to General, go to Settings, and look at their storage. If their storage is like this, they have something on there that you probably don't know about.
So the way the app works is you open it up and you put in, let's say their password is 400 divided by 4, and it opens up. So it's a working calculator. I mean, but it's where they could hide their stuff. So.
Like if you just do a phone check, it looks like the calculator. If you hit it and ask for a password, it's a vault app.
Another quick way to do it is apps that didn't come with your iPhone can be deleted. If that makes sense. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So they will, if you have given them access like an Apple ID and a password and money to be able to purchase things without a notification yes or no from you, like they load it on the way to school and they delete it on the way home. It's in their cloud, but if you don't know what a cloud is, they're adding it and deleting it. So if you do a phone check, it's not there. Does that make sense? But the cloud is housing everything they've purchased.
I have a question.
Yes.
What if it's connected, like our phones are connected to our kids' phones? Whatever app they are uploading, we get a notification on our phones that they have this app on their device.
Right.
So is that a check?
Yes, that is what you need. You have to have a check and balance. You have to have family share. Every carrier for $5 has the opportunity for you to do a notification. So-and-so is trying to download this, you say yes or no. And that's how you know what's in the cloud, that's how you know what's being downloaded.
Now, does that notification, like if one, like, you know, if you have 3 kids and one kid downloads it, that's like 20.
So each Apple ID is connected to your account.
Right, but so then does like the 11-year-old, does he get that too?
No, because they have separate Apple IDs.
So they need to have separate ones and not sure.
Right, separate Apple IDs and passwords. Yes.
And some of the vault apps, when you try to get it in and you don't know the password, it takes your picture. So my daughter had the nerve to go, why are you trying to get in my vault? And I go, why do you have a vault in the first place? So like, we got to do it. But like, it took my picture, I put in a password, thinking I knew the password, and she knew that I tried to get in her vault. So it will take a picture of a person that puts their wrong password.
The bottom line is these apps aren't designed in your favor. They're designed in the favor of whoever's using them to hide their pictures or whatever it is.
So kind of along the same lines of the whole allow. I do the same thing. I get the notification that I have to click allow. Do any of these apps bypass that screen. Does that make sense?
Mm-mm.
So if I have that turned on.
No, but when we
it's got to
have
be-
missing kids, and sometimes kids take off, they're mad, sometimes they take off for a long time. My first question is, do you have their Apple ID and password? Because even if you don't have their device, and kids that run away will leave their device at home on purpose and then either go to a friend's house and get on their Wi-Fi enabled device and use their Apple ID and password, I can track where they are based on their Wi-Fi use. Does that make sense? So if you don't have their Apple ID and password, I cannot find your child. So, like, pretty quickly, I can track most kids down because they're on an app and they're using it and it gives the location of where they are. Does that make sense? But a lot of parents are like, yeah, I don't even have the password to their phone. So that's obviously a family decision, but if they were living under my roof, I would be doing phone checks, I would have a central charging station. A really great, two things, because I know we gotta wrap up, but two things. Our Pact, O-U-R-P-A-C-T, is probably my favorite. I get a lot of questions about, like, how do we manage all of this? Our Pact allows you to have different filters for different kids. So if you have an 8-year-old that you don't want to watch MA+15 rated movies, you want the router to shut off at 8 p.m., you set that for that child. If you have a 12th grader that needs to use the internet for homework, you set his filter differently. You can be at, dinner, and you can shut down access to the internet in your home. So our Pact it shows you what websites they've been on, for how long they've been on. You can restrict things, you can add things. It's $1.99. You cannot. There's Circle by Disney, same thing, but it's $99 a year. There's Screen Studio, there's Q Studio, there's Screen Time, tons of different ways that you can monitor all of it. But the real way to monitor it is that connection and that relationship, because that's who they're going to come to. So the dance that we do as parents goes something like this. I trust you with this. Oh, you didn't clean your room? I need your device. I'm really tired after work. Here's your device. You made your sister mad? I need your device. So totally get it. But what happens with that is we're chipping away at that relationship. And when he decides to send a photo of his genitalia and it comes over here and I freak out, I am not going to her. I'm going to somebody else that looks like him or a girlfriend to say, what should I do? Should I send something back? And that half of a brain is sometimes going to say yes.
That hasn't happened, by the way.
But that's the dance we do. So either you trust them or you don't. You're going to embrace technology or you're not. And if you want to create a digitally led family, which I think we all do, we have to figure out what the balance is. Because we could talk 17 hours about these apps, but at the end of the day, the access and the medium they have, we have paid for and we have given them ownership of. So we have to own how we're going to manage and supervise it. And lastly, the handout on 13 reasons why. So they're rolling out season 2. It is a family decision whether or not you're going to let your child watch it. As a junior high school person for the last 20 years, Hollywood makes a lot of money glamorizing a lot of things. This series has glamorized suicide, is glamorized sexual assault, is glamorized the attention that you might get by doing risky things within this series. So, yes, oh, sorry. Season 2 is supposedly rolling out in the spring. There are more graphic scenes coming, and supposedly a school shooting will be part of season 2. So this foundation, the Jed Foundation and Save.org, have wonderful study guides on there for parents if you're going to allow your child to watch it. And some pieces of it, I have to be honest, are on point about what kids go through in the hallway, in the classrooms, etc. But what it's not on point about is the maturity level of what they see and then internalize could trigger a child that's already struggling, could trigger somebody that didn't know they were struggling. So we've got to be really careful about how we go about viewing these things and then talking as a family about it. So perhaps watch it by yourself, see what you think, and then use the study guide. But the markers of distress will show up pretty quickly. And so things like this, you know, it was the most watched Netflix series ever. And so again, they're banking on you probably not watching it with them. And you know, the Valerie reported more visits to the ER during season 1. I don't know if you can qualify that because it was spring. And the most high stress times for your kids are transitions. Starting school, long breaks away from their social group, weekends, and then ending school. That's when we see high peaks of discipline and high peaks of at-risk behavior, including depression and suicide. So if something seems off, it is. And there are wonderful people like Rajani and Mr. James and all sorts of counseling supports in all of our schools to help you either at the school level or if it's beyond their reach to refer out. Teen Lifeline, Impact, Mercy Maricopa, Not My Kid. I mean, there's so many great agencies. And all of them will be present at the town hall that you have the flyer about. I'd highly encourage you, if you can come on the 14th of September. We're going to have some amazing speakers there and families and students talking about how we can best help our kids. So thank you again, and thanks to you as well for your attendance. Yes?
The town hall event, is that maybe parents only, or is it something that would be inappropriate for your kids to do?
How old is your child?
Sorry?
How old is your child?
13.
I would say, so we put on the flyer 16 and up, but if you feel that they're mature enough to hear about anxiety, depression, social media, and the markers of suicide, I would bring them. It's a pretty amazing thing when you can dialogue about real deal stuff and they feel like you get them. And that's what kids are telling us is, you don't get us. And judging from this stuff, we got to keep up. Any other questions?